Did anybody watch Kamala Harris last night? Kamala Harris taken to the airwaves on CNN. She was out campaigning in Georgia and they sat down and I watched this and I'm like, first of all, she looks terrible, okay? So does Dana. I mean, Timmy, what are you going to do with him? She also, the optics of it, if you look at how they were seated around the table, now I know this, right? This is the producer in me. By seating her in the middle like that, the furthest away from the camera, she's pretty diminutive in stature to begin with. Like, she's not an especially tall woman. So you put her way back there, and then she gets really tiny. Like, I would have put her on like a seat or something, like give her a little altitude there. So Tim looks like a giant. Dana, who's not a giant, looks like a giant. And then there's little teeny itsy bitsy Kamala. Not exactly the image of strength that you want to present, right, as President of the United States. So that was sort of, mistake number one. Mistake number two is not having decent lighting. I mean, for goodness sakes, guys, you couldn't bring your good DC camera guys down there? Would you pick up a stringer team like on the ground somewhere that hasn't lit before? I mean, the lighting was terrible. So that's neither here nor there because, I care about substance. I'm just telling you, given my television background, I'm like, what is going on? Anyway, there was no substance. I mean, frankly, the whole thing was a darn bore. Very, very boring. You see the things that I go through for you. This is why you have to subscribe. Making me watch that stuff. Make sure you subscribe to the show that you like. You hit the bell, all that kind of stuff, so you know when I'm here live. And we are live. I was looking at your conversation that was going on right before we started. Don was after you guys to make sure that you hit the thumbs up. Do that. He's right. It definitely helps the algorithm, and every little bit helps. But Kamala Harris gave a very boring interview. Kamala Harris didn't answer the questions. And because she has a journalist, I say that in quotations, a television host that is really about access journalism, right? They want to make sure that they can come back for round two. The network wants to come back for round two. Dana wants to come back for round two. They don't actually ask the questions that they should be asking. And so there were many opportunities to push her to ask the follow-up, the natural, obvious follow-up. And Dana didn't. Now, in watching this, aside from the lighting and camera angles, Dana looked nervous. That journalist looked really nervous. Kamala Harris looked nervous too. I mean, I think it was just one big bundle of nerves there in that room. Maybe that's why she had Timmy. Come on, maybe Kamala thought that he could diffuse the nerves, that it would be a little less stressful. That in and of itself was kind of ridiculous. It's like she just doesn't want to answer the questions. She needs to have her emotional support animal right there by her side, just in case things get rough. He didn't answer the questions either, by the way. I mean, he was a total joke. And the reporter was a joke for not pushing and pushing harder. I mean, really unbelievable. And there was nothing of substance. I didn't get to hear anything about tax policy. I didn't get to hear anything meaningful on inflation. In fact, she just blamed the whole darn thing, of course, on Donald Trump. Watch it. It's all Trump's fault. Don't you know?
Way forward and turn the page on the last decade of what I believe has been contrary to where the spirit of our country really lies.
But the last decade, of course, the last 3.5 years has been part of your administration.
I'm talking about an era that started about a decade ago.
Like when you became senator? The timing's somewhat similar. So she's about change? I mean, this is hilarious. This woman has not changed. She's more the status quo. She's going to double down on the exact same horrific policies that have gotten us into this inflation mess to begin with. Somehow, she's had to come and make all these big things go away, like big bad economy, big bad inflation. I'm sorry, lady, Donald Trump handed you great GDP numbers. I mean, look, we were down some 30%, and then we were up more than 30%. And then, you're going into the first quarter in 2020, you got like 5% GDP growth. You got 1.7% inflation. I'll take that. Thank you very much. 1.7% inflation. And what happened? Kamala came up with her ridiculous Inflation Protection Act that had nothing to do with bringing inflation down and everything to do with spending your taxpayer dollars on all kinds of nonsensical stuff. And it was a lot of money. It was like more than double what Obama had put through with his $800 billion. This was like 1.6 trillion and counting. So wow, they did all that. They drove inflation high. It was upwards of 9%. And I don't care if it's 3% right now, because it was upwards of 9%, and then it was 7% and 6% and 5%. You got to remember, this is cumulative, right? It's not like it's going down. No, it goes up each. So even if you're down from the 9%, you're still up the 9%, up the 5%, up the 3%, for goodness sakes. Does Dana not understand this? She probably doesn't, because most of these reporters haven't got a clue on the economy. I say that in all seriousness. They really don't understand the economy, which is part of the problem. And they love to talk international stuff, and they love to talk, sort of White House drama, but they don't understand economics, and they don't want to talk about it. And so then you get stuff like this.
I've been vice president for 3.5 years. Yeah. The steps that you're talking about now, why haven't you done them already?
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%.
Like, it's a Friday afternoon in August. I really shouldn't be this worked up, right? I thought I was going to start throwing things on the television. I was like, wow, okay, keep it together, Trish, right? Just get your heart rate a little bit lower. It really bothers me when politicians get away with just lying through their teeth, and these reporters don't do anything. They just allow it and allow it and allow it. I fundamentally have a problem with that. I mean, I won't let either side do it. It's part of my downfall, right? And part of my charm. It used to happen a lot, especially on Bloomberg during the Obama economic years. Trust me. Anyway, look, I just think that it was her duty as a journalist to fire back with more questions. There was that moment, for example, when Timmy was asked about lying regarding his military service, and he didn't even answer the question. He immediately pivoted and started talking about his overall values and how everybody knows him, and he's just a good Midwestern guy. And Dana, to her credit, did come back and say, well, yes, but what about the military? And then he blames his wife. I mean, when in doubt, blame the missus. He blames his wife and says, well, she gets after him on his grammar because, his grammar isn't so precise. His grammar's not precise? That's really your excuse for trying to inflate your military service? I mean, come on. It's exhausting. These people, and yet, there are cheerleaders out there saying how great she did. No, she did not do great. She didn't do so hot.